Oh man, it's time for another episode of No Label Live, the show all about labels and how they can be your biggest adversity or your biggest advantage. The choice is yours. Each week, we bring on inspiring guests to share their story about how labels have impacted their life and the work that they do. So let's strap in and join this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? It's your man, Nathan, and if you are seeing my face, you know it's time for another episode of No Label Live. And we are talking about love, we are talking about perfection, and we are talking about what it means to battle labels that have held us back today. And joining me is my friend, Love MyLinh. MyLinh, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you today?
Oh, it's a beautiful day here. I'm super excited because we had a conversation, like a couple weeks ago about what we wanted to talk about, and I think you're going to impact a lot of people in this conversation. So, my first question is when we were talking about the label of perfection. So I want you to dive into that and how that's shown up in your life.
Well, I guess when we're talking about labels, I did actually get labeled with perfect. That was the most common term that was used, I guess, to encourage me, but also to destroy me growing up. And there was something about trying to live up to perfection so that I wouldn't draw negative attention or get in trouble. And it seemed to work for me most of the time until it didn't, to where it also created insecurities for people around me, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I feel like I was put on a pedestal and wasn't given any grace or forgiveness for any mistakes that I made because I was expected to be so perfect. And it didn't show up great in every scenario in life because oftentimes I got attacked for it as well. Being bullied in school and even in relationships, the label perfect kind of, it boxes you into this space where you're just not allowed to be your true self because there's expectations that others set on you
Yeah,
that you didn't necessarily agree to. And even if you pick it off, it's just kind of, yeah, it's been a journey, the word perfect. Sometimes it's triggering, right? And then sometimes it's empowering. But it's been definitely used to put me down as well.
that's so interesting because I had a conversation yesterday that was about the same type of thing. So I think that's interesting that you brought it up. And for me, one of those words is disability because people who don't have disabilities don't always like to use the word disability because it's got a negative attachment to it now. And I'm like, but that's not what it means for everyone. So I think the idea that labels can both be our greatest adversity and our greatest advantage at the same time is an interesting concept.
Yeah.
What um in your life experience of seeing that label of perfect show up for you, what's the thing that you wish people understood about you and who you are that they don't or did not because they saw this image of perfection?
Well, so I guess the word perfect, the way it limited my life was that was, I guess I was never very comfortable or never felt safe to speak my mind or to be fully self expressed. So whether it was speaking my thoughts, my true feelings, or saying no, um, and even simple things like dancing in public or singing, you know, the things that I love to do and enjoy. Just anything that has to do with sharing parts of myself, I learned to bottle it all up. And so I wish that people had more, I guess, more space for me to show up as who I am instead of expecting me to be how they expected me to be. And at the same time, there were people who would
Mm,
tell me, you're too perfect, you should just let down, or like, you're so perfect that it makes other people uncomfortable. And then I just feel like that also was diminishing who I was at the same
yeah.
time. So it kind of made me confuse most of my life of which world I wanted to live in. You know, which do I want to be perfect or not perfect? Sometimes when I would let my guards down, then I would be accused, like, see, you're not perfect after all, and it'd be used against me. So I just wish people would see that we're all human. When we do put these labels on each other, I guess if it's empowering, that's great. But at the same time, it's not always empowering. And just to be more sensitive is really
Mm,
important. I mean, it puts me in all kinds of spaces where, yeah, like I said earlier, I was never really to say no, never able to say no when I didn't want to do certain things, or never could speak up my true perspective because it was safer and more acceptable to just be perfectly quiet and go along with whatever everyone else was going along with. And I always struggled with that because naturally I I'm not a leader of people, but in my own life, I tend to take the lead, you know? So it was always a struggle to kind of just surrender myself.
mm,
And I think that's why I felt so suppressed my whole life. And so I'm constantly doing things to break the ice or break my mold and come out of my box. And even doing this podcast, I wouldn't have done this before I started this work of transformation and really owning the words that used to hurt me, you know? So, yeah, I guess if people had more space to be with me, they would know that I'm actually very compassionate. And for me to give in is not because I'm weak, it's really because I love and I just want to have peace in my life. And instead of taking it as an opportunity to take advantage of me, you know, they would also know that I love to sing so much. I love to dance and write. I am really good with people one on one. And
yeah.
surprisingly, I'm a huge introvert, which you wouldn't know that unless you actually sat with me. Um, and even us getting set up on this call today, you saw a bit of me. As confident as I am in the world, you saw how nervous I get, and then things break down because of
Yeah.
that. That shy side of me still comes out quite often, but I have to work, push through it to
Push
show up.
through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we, one of the things we said for those of you who are watching or listening is that, hey, it's not about what we look like on camera. It's about the conversation that we're having here today. And that's what I hope every show that I do for No Label Live creates. Um, I love the fact that you brought up creating space or holding space. What does that actually look like from your perspective?
Yeah, so like in my daily life, what I do is I'm in the beauty industry. I've been there for about over 20 years, and I do eyelash extensions and obviously, eyebrow microblading and all that. I love it. I've grown up in a salon space where I didn't realize my true opportunity in it until I was finished with college and hit a wall with trying to work in a cubicle that I was so excited about only because it was new. And my
Hmm.
excitement lasted about, I think, 6 months. Or I know it died within 2 or 3 months, but I kept pushing through anyway. And
Mm.
I couldn't stick with it because what I came to realize was I am so I'm such a lover of people, such an empath. I need to connect with humans on a daily basis and contribute to them.
Hmm.
I cannot just sit in a box and be on a phone. You know, connecting through a phone is not my favorite thing to do, surprisingly. I know I'm a millennial, but like I always say, I would not make any millennials proud by the way I live my life. So like I actually prefer one-on-ones in person. So being in the salon, what I realize I do is that I hold space very well for people. And how I came to that was I saw how I was with others in my life and why people were constantly writing me that I inspire them or, you know, texting or calling me to say that I've contributed to them somehow. And I never intended to, it's never an agenda, but it was just being one on one with people and letting them be who they are. And then I came to realize that's what I do in my daily life at work. I literally am with my clients one on one. And in that space, I am so open to them. And they could tell me any complaints that they have, it'll stay in the studio, it won't ever leave. And at the same time, I let them complain, I let them say what there is to say. And I don't ever tell people how to live their life. I don't solicit any sort of, you know, how you should do this or that, or, but I do share from my own experiences, or I share anonymously from other experiences that might be helpful.
Hmm.
It sounds like therapy, but it's really not because I have personal relationships with everyone and I find the common ground that I hold with each person who sits in front of me, even if it's not in a salon space. So holding space for someone is all about safety, right? I see that the number one thing that we need in life is safety. And it sounds so simple, but it's not there. I mean, you know intellectually that you're safe, but your body doesn't always align with that thought.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're walking and our bodies start reacting to things without us even knowing what triggered it. Um, Even noises, senses of smell, touch, taste, they trigger our memories. And so for me, holding space literally means just being so quiet and being so open and just having loving energy for that other person to feel that they are not in any sort of danger, whether or not they share something that they feel or something that they think or things that they've been through. I understand that it's hard not to judge people. And at the same time, I think it's easy because once you're committed to being someone's safety and you're committed to being loved for somebody, all that stuff doesn't get in the way. They could tell you anything and they could tell you the worst things ever. And if you're committed to being safety for somebody and being loved for somebody, there's just nothing that will stop you from truly listening and being there for them. It's not about telling them what to do. It's really just saying, hey, it's okay to be who you are and it's okay to think what you think, you know? And I love you anyway. I think we should practice more of that. A lot of people say they have unconditional love, but as I've experienced, it's conditional. A lot of people's love's very conditional. And so safety really is about having that quiet, peaceful, full attention and total, I guess, just love for the other person, compassion,
And
all of it.
that I like, so being quiet, to me, that's showing up and being able to listen and listen without thinking about how to solve a problem. Like you said, we're not there to solve a problem unless you ask, hey, how would you solve this?
Yeah.
um, and that energy piece is huge. So being fully present and being able to say, if if I was talking to myself, if I was showing up for myself, how would I want to be loved? And being able to bring that out of yourself to give to somebody else. I love that.
Yeah, because we all have that inner child that just wants to be loved.
Mhm.
We all have that inner child who just always needed safety. So I guess it is true that some of us, what we put out most in the world is exactly what we have needed the most through our childhood. If
I
that's
would
true,
agree. Yeah.
yeah, if that's true, then I'd have to say that that's my leading um, inspiration then. You know, not saying that my family wasn't loving or safe, but we all have our, as children, we all have our interpretations of our world
Yeah.
shaped by whatever experiences we had. And we can't always explain it, and then we can't make our families or our parents wrong for our childhood. It just is what it is, and it shows up anyway. And so, way deep inside me, I've always felt suppressed. I've always felt scared to make noise,
Mm.
physical noise. I've always been afraid to make, even visual noise. But I learned so young that I needed to be perfect in order for my life to work. If I wasn't perfect and ready, I would, be holding people back or getting in trouble. It showed up in all kinds of ways, like not being ready to go,
Yeah.
or like not being ready to go to school or not being ready to like just be available for my family or for my friends. It just doesn't work. And so that all contributed to the cycle of being perfect from a young age so that my family would include me or not leave me. So I wouldn't be a burden to people, always taking care
Mhm.
of myself so I wouldn't hold people back, you know?
That's
So that's
powerful.
that inner child that is just, hey, I'm not making noise, but I'm always ready and available and always ready to obey. That was my mentality, was I'm always quiet and ready to obey. Like I'm a good girl. Always
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
it was a lot of pressure and it was all I knew. And I also didn't know that I lived in anxiety state for most of my life because it was normal to always be on I
Yeah.
said always alert and always very aware of my surroundings, which is good.
Mhm.
My senses are heightened for sure. As an introvert, you tend to observe, and that's very much how I am. I can be anywhere and be completely observant and aware of my surroundings. And at the same time, it had me live in my head and not always out here in the real world. So at the same time, I did miss out on many opportunities in life, and experiences in life too. So not just opportunities, but
Um, it's so interesting because the first time we actually met each other was during the dance party at
yeah.
Summit of Greatness. So this is an interesting perspective. Like if I'm looking back at when we first met, I would not have guessed any of this stuff that you're telling me. So
Yeah.
I think that's the human condition too. Like we
Hmm.
only see what we see, and we only see what people feel comfortable, like you said, and safe to show us. Um, so, what made that shift for you to become, as you say in your profile, pro voice, and to be somebody who now uses their voice because you're an advocate for Asian Americans when it comes to domestic abuse. So, what made that shift for you?
So I guess, there are so many things that led up to it. It's interesting how you look back at life and you've had so many breakdowns and start to realize that the cycles that keep repeating were due to your own participation.
Mm.
And I did not ever see myself as a victim. I was too proud to say that anyone could ever take advantage of me, especially, after school was over. It just kind of felt like bullying shouldn't and doesn't happen in your adult life, right? It
We
never
wish.
does. It's like, and
Yeah.
so happening, it's not happening. That's not what it is. So I actually had to experience a pretty rude awakening. I was married before and was with the person for a very long time and made up my decision in life that this was it, because to me, marriage lasts forever no matter what.
Hmm.
There's just nothing in the world that's going to make me break away from my marriage. I was very committed, very loyal all the way through. And then one day I experienced the last of very many breakdowns in the relationship. Many, many breakdowns that happened from the start. And I was very proud of myself for being able to constantly work through and still be there. But the day that he was actually the one that decided my forgiveness was perpetuating the cycle, he decided to leave. And I was so confused because I was doing all the right things to make marriage work, even though it was already destroyed. My level of compassion and love for love showed up as, you know, putting up with way too many things that a human being shouldn't have to. But what I learned the most was when I went through this relationship, I was so loyal to the other person that I wasn't loyal to myself. And that took a long time to discover. And it took a lot of really painful, um, I guess, painful breakdowns where I was alone every time and had to just really go through it alone and heal through it by myself, never really talk about it. And when I realized that loyalty takes two people and that I was in denial for many of the years, thinking that I was happy and we had a great marriage, refusing to be seen as a victim actually victimized me in itself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit more.
Um, so because I refused to see myself as a victim and I was too proud to admit that I was going through so much abuse, I didn't talk about the depression that it pushed me into. He knew that I was becoming more and more depressed. And then he also saw me constantly searching through yoga. I was addicted to yoga very much. And if it wasn't yoga, it was other high impact workouts like spin,
Hmm.
or it was, boot camp. I was always in something physically
Mm.
exerting, I guess, very high intensity. And when I started doing yoga, that's when I learned the most about myself. I would still choose to push my body to the max, doing crazy inversions, twists, upside down, all around the world poses, because yoga was my calming, it was my safety, but at the same time, I think my body was still trying to push through all this pain that I refused to speak. And my presence, people say, is very powerful, but I never felt powerful. Even walking into a room, I would feel people's energies shift towards me and be afraid to make eye contact and look up because I knew that if anyone was to ask me, "Are you okay?" or "What's wrong?" that I would just break down. So to hold it together
Wow.
meant I'm not a victim. I gotta always be perfect. Talk about the weather for about 5 seconds and then talk about other things that are more meaningful, but never talk about my own self and what I really dealt with. So for
Mm.
15 and a half years, nobody knew. I hardly knew because I had that lens in front of me. I mean, I'm someone who spent my whole life, growing up from childhood, so proud that I would never go through domestic violence because I'm educated and I'm an all American born human being, just kind of arrogant that it would never happen to me. Yet, looking back, I've been bullied over and over since childhood, and then was in a domestic violence relationship in high school. Got out, then was and met a hero, pretty much a knight in shining armor at
God.
18, and then went through the same cycle there, and even in that went through the same cycle with you know friendships, uh, in-laws, family, just the same cycle of where I was constantly being made wrong for being perfect and being picked and pulled apart for things that made me not perfect. All that contributed to me constantly working on myself to become a better person so that the ex-husband could love me enough, or the in-laws could see me for who I really am, and just for my surroundings to know me at my heart and see how much I just was practically desperate to love and be loved. If I had identified myself as a victim, I felt like it would have made me feel like a failure, especially to my family, who was so proud of me for being married to this person that they saw as amazing and the one for me, but had no idea what I was really going through. So even upholding the level of perfection to keep that facade, having people see us as a power couple and the ideal marriage, um, all these things contributed more and more to me believing that I was the problem. So I became so addicted to self-growth and self-work and the level of humility that it required for me to constantly give in to what people criticize me for in order to work on it, I now know was unhealthy. You know, I was more dedicated and more committed to proving to myself that I wasn't the victim, taking matters into my own hands and constantly work on myself so I become more lovable and more of what others need to be so that I could be accepted by them. And not realizing that actually I should be making those decisions. I should be loving myself enough to say that they don't belong in my life. But I didn't have the power. I gave up my power constantly. And that was all living inside the world of refusing to be a victim and being so proud and saying to myself that this is happiness and what's happening isn't happening,
Mm,
So
that's
yeah,
powerful. What? So I know there's somebody who's sitting there watching this that is like, holy crap, I'm going through the same thing. Like, I see myself in MyLin's story. What advice would you give them here today?
it's it's really tough. I know it is. And it's so hard to share your story. And when you finally have the courage to, I think I read it with Brene Brown in one of her books that even when you finally have the courage to share your story, you have to also be prepared to be attacked on what you worked so hard to have the courage to say.
Mm,
So, as if suffering all those years weren't enough, you're going through a whole nother round of attack that you couldn't fathom because you get to this space where you're so proud that you're so strong that you've made it. And you're so proud because you finally are heard and you're validated and you realize you're not the crazy one and you're not the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet then you get attacked for people who are, you're going to experience something real called victim blaming. And I didn't understand that even at first. When I first came out and people were doubting me, I doubted myself too. And then I realized that that was all that was in the relationship of domestic violence, and any time that you're getting bullied in life anywhere, even in workplace bullying, family, anything. When you're going through victim blaming, it confuses you all over again. Like, did that really happen? Am I crazy? And
Mm-hmm.
then I know I'm not crazy. And am I crazy for sharing my story? And the whole thing of I can't be crazy for sharing my story because it's my story and it's what I went through. And I know what it was like to be so silent, clearly, for at least 34 years, right? It was not just 15 years of being silent about my domestic violence relationship. It was also 34 years of just learning how to be quiet so that I could be loved and not punished. And so going through all of that, finally speaking up, then being told that what you experienced did not happen is exactly the same cycle that happened while you were in those relationships in the first place. But this time, what we get is the power to really reach out and stay connected with people who have been there and who are speaking up, who are speaking our truth for us before we're able. And that is what I found, safety in others. uh, YouTube videos or even clients who have been there and share their journey without me ever sharing my journey before I even had the consciousness to realize that I was actually a victim of it. But even to this day, I'm not a victim of anything. I know I'm still living in the same cycle of denial, but at the same time, it's me declaring that I'm not a victim of anything or anybody today. I am choosing to have control. And it's not always easy, but I'm committed to it. And that is essential to my survival. And for me to survive is one thing, but more than any is that I choose to still love and I still choose to stay open so that I can live my life and experience it fully so that I can live my purpose. And I know my purpose is to speak for second generation Asian Americans at least. It's definitely all inclusive. My voice is for everyone, but who I am, I relate to the most
Mm-hmm.
is that I was born here and very proud that this would never happen to me. I know there are many people in the world who are like that. And for me, it comes from a space of being taught to stay silent, saving face. I know that shows up in all cultures in a different
Mm-hmm.
way. And from as what I know, in my culture, it kills. It's killing people inside out, from inside our own culture all the way out. People are literally dying from this expectation and social norm to just stay silent, even if you're not the perpetrator. And all it does is feeds fire to the perpetrator, the person who creates harm. And they get to continue their cycle because we're graciously quiet and holding all their secrets. So what I want to share for that other person who is in my space and can relate to the story is keep going, keep staying strong and throwing all cliche things out the window. I just want to say that you are very beautiful and you really do have a purpose in this life. And the only way that I know that is because of the fact that I was still waking up every day, even when I didn't want to. I was still getting up out of bed. So that's what I can offer is the days that you don't want to get up, get up. When you don't want to wake up, force yourself to open your eyes, And if you don't want to jump out of bed right away, that's okay. But really, like, if you can find any parts of you to know that you have an inner child to love and to express, there's someone out there who deserves to be loved by you. Your capacity is meant to be matched. And it would be so unfair if, of all the people in the world, God chose only you to suffer and to not allow to be loved by any other human being. It just doesn't make sense. There's no way that that was our purpose in life, to be diminished and to be someone else's punching bag. I just don't believe that we were created, any of us. I don't believe any of us was created to be small and to serve someone else's insecurities so that they can feel safe, so that they can feel like they're lovable.
Mm.
There's just no way that our purpose is to be attacked and to be squished in a box and to be completely shattered and to give up. So just know that if you're waking up, if you're simply breathing, you're meant to be here and you're changing someone else's life just by showing up at the coffee shop and smiling, even when you're feeling crappy, just by holding the door open for someone who won't even say hi or thank you. And it's not even personal. It's literally because they're going through so much pain and they're living inside their head.
Amen.
You're
Amen.
changing someone's life. You're changing someone's life when they literally even tell you how horrible of a human being you are and you smile anyway. You're
Yeah.
changing their people. Don't forget the acts of kindness. They just may not always thank you, and that's not wrong or right. It literally is what it is. But you make a difference. So just trust in yourself that you have the power to love yourself. And it makes no sense because when I was there, I didn't understand that. What do you mean love myself? I do love myself. I was always so like easily offended by that statement. And so I don't even know how to describe what it would look like. And even now today, I know I love myself and I can't explain how to make it make sense to people or how to get people there. But in the end, you do have to celebrate the small wins and you'll see how you can transform people's lives just by showing up and sometimes doing nothing and saying nothing at all, just being there for people. So you in your most depressed and most broken state need to get out of bed. You need to wake up in the morning, put on your clothes, you need to brush your teeth one step at a time.
Mm.
You don't feel well, get up. You don't want to, get up. You hate yourself, get up. You feel like you don't deserve to be here, get up. You don't want to live another day, get the F up. Brush your teeth, take a shower, put on a t-shirt, put on some pants. You don't even have to wear underwear. But get the hell up and do it anyway. If you can't do it with a smile, just do it silently without attacking other people, but just do it anyway. I promise, one step at a time, and all of a sudden, you're here like over a year later now, smiling and glowing, and it's unfathomable the level of joy that naturally exists in you. And then you realize that was actually what carried you all
Mm.
the way through. That self-love that was there, but you just weren't taught that you were allowed to. Love yourself. And so one step at a time, really, until you're here. And when you're here, we'll talk about what's next.
Yeah. So I want to go with this before I ask my next question. But MyLinh didn't say it. She didn't use the word, but I think as we're learning in this episode and all other episodes, language is powerful. And she told you to get the fuck up. She that's
That
what
was so
she
good.
that's what she told you to do because you matter. Um, so,
I just put water all over myself because it's true, right?
yeah, I,
Sometimes you just got to get the F up and
yeah.
just do it.
And for that person who that message hit home with, how can they connect with you?
How can they connect with me? I am on social media. You can find me at love.mylin on Instagram. And on Facebook, I'm at love MyLinh, which has a space. And I think we'll include that all here.
Yeah,
But
we'll include all that.
consistently, um, I am love. And so, talking about how words are powerful, I used to be Linspirations on Instagram. And I got really tired years ago of waiting to be loved by the people in my life, but especially in my marriage. I just felt like I was really tired of waiting for love to arrive for me and to me. So I created Love Me Lynn with the intention of manifesting love in my life, calling into the universe and calling to God to bring love to me so that I can continue to pour out. But the miraculous thing is, even when I was feeling unloved, I had such capacity to give, but I needed more because I was diminishing and I couldn't deny it anymore. I was dying. So I created Love Me Land in order to make this whole entire world shift for me so that I could be my full self and live out my purpose for others. And so you can find me at Love Me Lynn anywhere, because that's who I am for the world, and that's who I am for you. And as I am that for you, you are showing up as that for me in ways where I can express my gratitude for your existence so that I can be who I am. Because without you, there's no me, right?
Yeah.
I can't be love if there's no one receiving it from me.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. I got the one last question I want to end on, and it's the one that I ask everybody, and that's, what does no label defines me mean to you?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah. What does no label defines me mean to you?
No label defines me. Well, no label defines me because I define me. And labels are so restrictive, they can also be empowering. But no labels define me because they are always fleeting, they're always changing.
Mm,
They're just words, you know? I know my power and I get to choose to say who I am. I get to choose to be who I am. And I refuse to live inside a box. So anytime that I'm being labeled, I'm definitely going to try to break that in order to show the world that you get to recreate and reinvent yourself at any moment. You don't have to be anything or do anything in life, but you get to choose. So, even in the label of being perfect, to me, it doesn't even hurt me the way it used to. And it doesn't even empower me the way it used to,
mm,
which is a beautiful transformation of a relationship that I never knew I needed. Is to get to this point of where it means nothing to me, that I can actually laugh about it. And
yeah.
no labels should define any of us because we are growing creatures. We're human beings. And talking about the human condition is about transformation, evolution of the mind, the body, and the spirit. So if we're attaching to labels, we are so limited to self-expression and self-growth. We'll never reach our potential or our purpose. So no labels define me.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was a powerful episode, and I want to make sure that if you know somebody who's dealing with this situation, if you know somebody who can connect to this story, who can see themselves in this story, if it's you or not, please share it out so that this message is spread. It's an important one. We are all human beings. And I just want to acknowledge you, MyLinh, for getting on and sharing your story with us here today.
Thank you so much for having me. And could I add one more thing before we go?
Yeah.
Um, so if you are suffering from domestic violence, I know those words are very painful. I hate the word suffering and I hate the words domestic violence. And at the same time, refusing to be a victim is everything that contributes to the cycle. Denial is not helping us, break this cycle at all. So if you are experiencing any sort of abuse, just know that you're not alone. You really are not alone. And it's okay. I lost most of my community when I spoke up. And when I go completely public, I'm going to lose more people. But you know what I've realized? I lost one and I've gained 50. You'd be surprised, shocked, overwhelmed at the kind of support you actually receive and the beautiful people who constantly come towards you and come for you when you break the silence and you break the cycle. You just got to speak up, but speak up safely. And if you don't know how, you can reach out to me. I'll share with you some tips that I've learned along the way about how to do it safely. And at the same time, if you know someone who's going through it, be kind and be patient. Love shows up in all kinds of ways. There's the kind of love that didn't work for me, the aggression of where you need to get the hell out. This was what it was like in high school. And it puts fear in me when people are aggressive. I was dealing with a very aggressive, violent ex-husband. So I was scared of anyone who showed up that way. Even if it showed up as love, I couldn't receive it.
Mm.
So be thoughtful and be mindful that the person you're trying to rescue won't respond to your aggression or, outward and loud expressions of trying to pull them out of the relationship. Just be patient. So I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but forcing someone to leave somebody because they are in a domestic violence relationship is not going to work. Telling them that they deserve better helps, but saying, what the heck is wrong with you? You don't deserve that. That doesn't work. I just love you so much. I just want you to get out. Aggression doesn't work here for people like me. So be kind, be patient, and just be the space of safety. I love you. I hear you anyway, and I'll be here for when you're ready to leave. Those are that is the safest way you can create a blanket for someone who really needs it. So again, if you know someone who's suffering through it, don't force them out. Don't don't do anything that could trigger the partner even, because you don't realize what kind of danger you're putting them into. And if your friend or family member isolates and cuts off communication with you, understand that it's not personal and don't hate them for it. It's them surviving. Something happened to where they couldn't communicate with you anymore. So be that safety for them so that they can still come to you. And don't use it against them that they're still in that relationship. They're not weak. You're not weak for being in that relationship. You're not stupid. You're not unworthy. And so therefore he's or she's the only one that's able to love you. You're just in a cycle that you're familiar with. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we just gotta work to get you out. But even working to get you out requires a whole lot of love, safety, and patience and healing. So if you or someone you know is in it, be kind all the way. Just be kind. I know how it feels to go into protective mama bear mode, papa bear mode, parental mode, but it doesn't always work. So just be kind and be patient and just, I love you anyway. I'm going to be here anyway. No matter what you need, whenever you need it, I'm here anyway. No matter what.
What a way to end the show. And I'm just going to leave it there. So you guys will know where to talk to MyLinh if this touched you, or reach out to me and I can get you in contact with her. But with that, we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much, Nathan.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of No Label Live. If you enjoyed it, make sure and share it with a friend and tag me. Let me know your thoughts on the episode. Connect with me on YouTube and Instagram at _Nathan_Todd. And make sure and let a friend know that they are more than their label. They matter, and they are one step away from their success. And remember, my friend, you're up to big things. And when you're up to big things, you must be patient, you must be diligent, and you must never, never quit. And you can catch new episodes of No Label Live here every Friday.